Oh, there, I can speak. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Lawrence or Lance or Larry, one half of the Serfs. We're going to have a show for you today with lots of syrupy goodness. I have Dave, who's coming on. You can see Dave right here. This is Dave of the future. And then on top of that, I'm going to also bring on the Seriously Wrong podcast. Hopefully they're not too seriously wrong. So let me see if all this is going to work. This is also one of the first times we've done something like this. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
You guys are a little quiet. I'm just going to turn you up. Why doesn't everyone sound off, say hello, and maybe I can adjust audio levels while you're doing it? Oh, Sean, you're...
Yeah, I don't hear Sean at all.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I enabled push to talk and forgot because I'm very dumb.
Ah, good.
Yeah, so my name's Sean. I'm a co-host of Seriously Wrong along with Aaron, political comedy stuff, also based out of Vancouver.
Yeah, and I'm Aaron, also on the same podcast, same city. It's great to be on the stream with you guys.
I'm going to turn you up, Aaron. You're really quiet.
Okay. I can be able to turn myself up too if you need.
And I'm Dave, the other half of the Serfs. I don't
Hey,
know why
Dave.
I introduced myself, but I figure mine as well. Everybody else is introducing themselves.
Well, it's good to see everybody. And hello to you two. Chat in the YouTubes. I got you in the corner now. I don't know why you're not popping up on the screen. This wouldn't be a lefty show if there wasn't a whole bunch of technical glitches and errors. They're pretty much necessary at this point. Okay, well, I get this all fixed up. Do you guys want to give a quick intro to the Seriously Wrong podcast for anyone of our viewers who hasn't heard you before?
Sure, yeah. So our show, Seriously Wrong, we started originally in 2014, although it's changed a lot over the years as politics has changed. And we've learned a lot about ourselves and each other in the world. But the heart of the show is that it's a utopian comedy podcast. We try to imagine specific sort of ideas of what the future could be like. It's a reoccurring theme through what we do, and try to cover, radical politics, stuff like prison abolition, and make a case for it that hopefully people across the spectrum can agree with, try to avoid jargon, even though jargon's really, really fun. And I also love using jargon.
It's funny that something like prison abolition would be considered radical.
Yeah, well, during the COVID-19 crisis, we're actually seeing governments around the world that are saying, hey, actually, a lot of these people who are in prison don't, if the choice is keeping them in prison and allowing them to die, or acknowledging that they never did anything that bad in the first place, I guess you got the gun to our head. It wasn't that bad. They could go.
You're free. I'm just gonna.
But yeah, prison abolition is really scary to people too. I think just because it sounds like you're gonna have a bunch of like evil men who are walking the streets. But there's a whole spectrum of, and we get into this. I can't remember the specific episode. We got an episode, prisons must be abolished. We go into this for like 2 hours. So the different how to move towards decarceration and et cetera is a good example of the kind of thing that we do. But the broad thing is like we want an ecologically direct democratic society. People are paid according to need, a confederation of communes, et cetera, the abolition of patriarchy, white supremacy, et cetera. We know all the stuff that needs to be done, but we want to do it all at once.
All at once. Chat, or I guess I'll reference you for a second, chat. How are the audio levels? Because I mean, once we actually take off and get going, they're going to use this as a podcast as well. So I want it to sound as beautiful as possible. So I'll wait 2 seconds for them to catch up. Oh, nice! I got that on the screen though. Everything looks pretty again. We did it. By we, I mean me, just clicking buttons. So I guess we're going to talk about news and everything, or should we all do intros? Like, I don't know how the start of your podcast normally work. You guys probably have a whole ebb and flow.
Yeah, if we should be able to pick up a lot of stuff in the edit. Like we'll just add some little clips and stuff to connect it. But something that'd be great is if you two don't mind introducing yourselves and what you do on the server.
Okay, Dave, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Dave of the Serfs, one half of the comedy stylings of the Serfs. I am more of the podcast person at this day and age, less on the Twitch stream like Lance. Lance is usually the Twitcher guy, but
I'm Twitchy.
Yeah, you're Twitchy.
And yeah, I'm Lance the Other Surf. We started out originally as a podcast, and then we blossomed into a YouTube channel, and then some alt-right trolls took our YouTube channel down, and there was a big, nice grassroots effort to try and resurrect it, which was really wonderful. And we kind of became a little more popular after that, and we've been doing whatever you can call this dumpster fire ever since. Political comedy of the strange persuasion, and yeah, I usually broadcast on Twitch, and then me and Dave combine forces to do podcasts and YouTube sketches and stuff. And the latest one we're working on right now is a piece on ContraPoints versus JREG or JREG or JREG. So that'll be fun. Very uncontroversial subjects. We're taking things lightly now.
I think everyone's going to agree with whatever your conclusion is,
or lack of conclusion, or no conclusion. That's the great thing about JREG, right? It can be everything and nothing simultaneously. So yeah, should we just go head first into the wonderful world that is the world right now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of good news this week, right?
Probably.
Oh, you mean COVID-wise? Because there was some good news, COVID-wise. But
I thought you just meant in general, there's usually some good news, even if we didn't see it or notice it from all the bad news. Like it was probably there somewhere.
Well, 2020's just been a run of great news.
Yeah.
Yeah, right out of the gate, they just started. They were just like, yeah, this is 2020. Get used to it.
Oh, the Australian wildfires kind of died. But that is mostly because their season is over, not because of anything on our part. Like we didn't
ran out of trees.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's that. That's good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess Bernie Sanders dropping out. Could we start there? That's probably a good place to begin. Thoughts, well wishes, tears.
I wish him well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the writing was on the wall for anybody who's really paying attention for a while, right? Not, like obviously, like all the stuff that he's done cannot be discounted. Like he's done so much to actually move the movement forward, and grow, and like push people towards this kind of like bring it to the forefront of like this, American conscience, which is like applaudable in the greatest scheme of things. I mean, obviously, not obviously, but if people, I have been pretty pessimistic on Bernie's chances going into last year, right? I just thought two things that were going to really like hamper his quest for the presidency, which was the DNC as a whole being against him, and Bernie just being too nice of a person to really fight dirty. So
that's what it really came down to, right? He was too nice. he was too good for this world.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I don't know. You probably know a little bit better why he dropped now, as opposed to to keep pushing the fight. Maybe it's just COVID stuff.
Well, my personal view on that is I think he kind of saw the breaking point. Like he dropped out before learning the election results, right? So he doesn't like, it's not like it's if it's another blowout in Wisconsin and now he's dropped out. He dropped out after seeing the fact that Joe Biden and the Democratic National Convention weren't going to shut this down. In fact, the governor tried to do it, and then the Supreme Court struck that down. And they were like, yeah, we want you human meat vessels to still go out there and do your democratic process. And 3% of the people showed up, and I think this is all just me guessing, but to someone like Bernie Sanders, who sits back and obviously doesn't want people to die, was probably like, yeah, I can't defeat this. There's like I'm not willing to throw human beings into the meat grinder to win this election, right?
I saw a tweet where someone had said that the reason Bernie dropped out is because the Democratic Party had literally started executing hostages. That might be a good win.
See, there he goes being too nice again. You know?
Yeah. He's got to take a hostage or two.
Yeah, it's interesting to imagine how it would have went differently if from the start Bernie was like, actually, Joe Biden is an evil man, and I've got receipts, and I'm going to start running. Like from the beginning, it seemed pretty clear early on that Bernie was, or that Biden rather would become the favorite later on, and in the lead up to Iowa, I think they really successfully sort of pulled the wool over eyes with Bloomberg and everything. And whether or not it was conscious or unconscious, the way that it all sort of worked out was I was reading my, like right after North Carolina or South Carolina when Biden won, I was looking through I've been super online during the primary about this stuff and just like tweeting all day, like some people apparently do all the time. But I got like really into it for like 14 hours or whatever for like some of these things. And I was looking through my tweets and I was like, I haven't shit on Biden in they got me. I haven't shit on Biden in months.
Yeah, like what did you guys think of that moment? Because I remember distinctly the moment when he was asked in one of the debates, could Joe Biden defeat Donald Trump? And he was like, yes, he's a good man, or something to that effect, right? And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, you can't do that. Like, oh no. Like this is the debates. This is when you throw the poop.
Well, in the earlier debates, we saw more attacks coming from the Kamala Harris's and Pete, and I can't remember who else. Like they went hard after Biden, which made sense because he was their main competition.
Yeah, the presumed front runner.
Yeah, to gain that kind of coalesce that centrist kind of policy and vote. So it made sense for them to attack him. But the entire time, Bernie sat back. And I guess you could make an argument that for where he was standing ideologically, it made sense not to, let those guys fight it out and whittle down Biden. But I guess it was shocking that how quickly Biden went from person non grata, like, oh, he's an outsider, he lost that favorite chance, he's out, to then everybody dropping out, everybody supporting him right away. And all of a sudden, boom, he was back in business.
Mm-hmm.
And then no debates for a while. Very odd.
Yeah, I don't think Bernie even really had a chance to go hard on Biden because the last debate before Biden won his first primary just before Super Tuesday, everyone was still feeling like Biden was nobody. Like, yeah, he'll probably win the next primary by a small margin, but it's really nothing when you're looking at all the other states are lining up for Bernie currently. Like I was going through 538 and seeing every state being like, Bernie's winning in the polls, Bernie's winning in the polls, or like most states, and just being like, damn, this thing's in the bag. Like none of these other contenders could possibly catch up at this point. Like they have no momentum and nobody likes any of them. They're just all terrible. Like maybe Bloomberg will swoop in for Super
he was
Tuesday,
but
like
their original the horse, right? Like it seemed like they were kind of like they changed the rules so that he could enter the debates, and then it was going to be like billionaire versus billionaire. Like a lot of people were like, oh yeah, Bloomberg could do this. The
super conspiracy part of me thinks like that was all just like they were never really going for Bloomberg, and they knew everyone would go after, but like it kept Biden in the background until the right moment. But like, yeah. I don't think it's actually all that planned out, but they definitely seized on the moment properly. And yeah.
I think they were open to any number of possibilities, but what it came down to, and if you look at the California information, and I don't really see people talking about this because we're focused on the sadness and mourning and stuff, and we should. But if you look at the California information, like the final result there, you take Biden's vote and then you assign a piece of his vote to each of all the people who dropped out right before Super Tuesday. And it looks like if they didn't consolidate, Bernie would have not just won California, but won hundreds and hundreds of delegates there because no one else met the threshold, except for maybe one person. So I think what happened was they were planning to keep it going, but then they had this internal data from like the Biden or Bloomberg campaign or whatever that said, and I know that Bloomberg had a really intense data campaign, as they're saying like, look, if you don't drop out tonight, tomorrow Bernie becomes the nominee. There's no way around it. Bernie will be the nominee unless you drop out. And I think that's pretty compelling for people. And I think they also promised each of them that they would be vice president.
didn't the Club like let that slip at some point? She was like, I may be the pick or something, and then everyone was like, oh my god, what has she been promised?
I think they were using the language, so there's this real sneaky sort of like organizing devilish stuff where there's a video of Biden and Buttigieg where Biden's like, yeah, support me and Buttigieg, like I'm going to be working with Buttigieg, and there's this sort of like wink nudge like Buttigieg might be the nominee or like the vice the Veep, or like he's trying to imply that like he's been coached to like imply to all of them that they're going to be the vice. And Andrew Yang said on Twitter after Biden committed to having a woman as his running mate, he was like, Biden didn't say that to me when he was trying to get me to endorse him. Like there's this implication there. And I really think they legit implied it to everyone. And it's just like dirty, good old politics.
I mean, you can imply it's a possibility to everyone and not even be lying. Like
that's true, actually.
There's some it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also promise it to everybody, and then after they drop out, it's like, well, sorry, too late.
Yeah, we're gonna under.
I don't know enough about the two of you. Are you both kind of Bernie or Buster crowd? I mean, you're Canadians, right? So you get the privilege of being like, well, I don't even have to vote in this because
yeah, we float above it all.
Yeah, lord it over everyone.
It's pretty great, really.
Yeah.
I think the decision of how people are going to cast their ballots in November, just being really pragmatic and realistic, is that 4 out of 5 Bernie voters are going to vote for Biden, no matter what a great case we make against Biden or what a great case we make for Biden. About 4 out of 5. It could drop lower if people are really mad at the Democratic Party. So we'll see how they handle these next couple months. But it's not, I think we make a strategic mistake when we start talking about and individualizing it. Like, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm not, because it's actually a big systemic thing, which is that people are being disenfranchised. And so I can be the good, it creates this dichotomy of like, oh, I'm a good Bernie bro and I condemn the bad Bernie bros or something like that.
Yeah.
But the whole good bad dichotomy in this instance is being used to damage progressive politics. So we should take the stance, I think, of saying like being sort of agnostic on the personal stuff, at least publicly. But then also I sort of want to say like we should threaten to withhold our vote because we need to get some fucking concessions on some of this key stuff. So coming out the day that Bernie, like my mom messaged me and we're Canadians and she's like, well, Bernie's out. So are you supporting Biden?
Joe Biden.
And I'm like, she's sweet. Like she's sweet. Like, I'm not shitting on her, but it's like, it's 6 months away and we're Canadian. Like what?
And wash your hands, Mom. Come on, please.
I don't know. Like there's a big difference to me between like supporting Joe Biden and being like, I totally understand why people would still want to vote for them if they're like really concerned about who's going to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg or even just like federal level judges
or DACA, for example. I think that's a very tangible reason.
Yeah, there's real tangible reasons, but at the same time, like I don't know if I can stomach like telling anyone that I think they should vote for Biden because there's a lot of reasons also to not do that. So yeah, I mean,
and at the end of the day, there's also the electoral college that comes into play too, right? Like in most states in the union, it's really irrelevant if you vote Biden or not, right? Like what matters is voting down ballot and trying to pick as many progressive candidates in it throughout the race as possible. But like if you're living in say like Mississippi or Alabama, it doesn't matter if you choose Biden there or Trump there.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, what is it? I think the OK Boomer girl is probably going to be a popular write-in candidate in most of those states. I'm with all of you. I'm someone who voted for Justin Trudeau because I was so very afraid of Stephen Harper continuing to remain in power. And obviously it felt very dirty at the time. I had the pleasure of voting for Jagmeet Singh in the following election, but I mean, even though anyone who's listening to this, by the way, if you're an American listener, we don't actually get to vote for our prime minister. Our prime minister forms via Voltron or Captain Planet rules, where the more MPs that form the majority party get to form the prime minister as well.
I voted for Sean in that election Trudeau one. Sean was running in my riding with the Pirate Party.
It's true, yeah. In Trudeau's original 2015 election, I was running with the Pirate Party of Canada in Vancouver East. I got 188 votes, and that was with directly soliciting people to not vote.
Well, you just got my vote.
But the best part was debating the other politicians. Oh my God. It's worth the paperwork. It's worth the $1,000 deposit for real. Like in Canada, I think it's 250 signatures, $1,000 deposit you get back. You need to find an agent and there's some technical shit you have to do. But if you're not spending any money, it's really easy. And getting to debate politicians. Oh my God. I would do it every 4 years. Really.
That sounds so much fun.
How many debates were you did you participate in with the local rise?
There were like 8 or so debates in the riding, and there was only 2 that I was able to get into because of my marginal status. But I made the best of it. I got cheers for calling for the abolition of borders in 2015, and like amazing. From this like normie audience or whatever. And then the other thing that people really liked, or it was sort of divisive, but some people really liked it, is I was calling for shortening the workday and keeping pay the same. And framing it in terms of you have more time to spend with your families. And I remember this one guy in particular, this mustachioed, more portly gentleman at the back, who just started applauding, like, yes, yeah, like 2 more hours with my kids. So I think there's actually, and this is a good example, I think, of some of the benefits of electoral politics when we're like we can talk shit about social democrats and stuff, and for good reason. You can look at all these examples of like social democrats in power and stuff, but the narrative function of elections, I think, is so powerful. And you can look at what I think Bernie Sanders has helped cascade forth over the last 5 years, and it's the narrative work of his campaign.
I completely agree. That's what I've been trying to tell people, is that he did win in a lot of ways. Like if you look at Joe Biden's actual campaign page, because I was going through it today on an earlier stream, like he is so further left in terms of like what Joe Biden would have been had he been running like even 4 years ago. Like so many things are clearly Bernie Sanders ideas, or it's just because these are now populist ideas, because now this is just something that Americans are tapped into, right? Like I think all the exit polls during a lot of those primary races, even if they weren't voting for Bernie Sanders, they were overwhelmingly in favor of his policies, like Medicare for all, or even the more outrageous one. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a question posed to people: do you think the current capitalist economic system is working? And the majority of them said it needs reform and or needs to be changed. And I was like, I never thought I would see that in my lifetime, coming out of America, of all places.
Although reform could suck ass.
Pirate Party, baby.
In the year before last, 2018. So here in Vancouver, we got the local municipal party, COPE, and Jean Swanson is elected to city council. And so in 2018, I was her campaign manager, and one of the things that we talked about in the campaign was in one of her interviews, she had said something like off the cuff that was like, we need to figure out ways to reduce or eliminate capitalism. And we just thought it was the best, like, because it almost sounds sort of technocratic. And we're like, yeah, we're going to create a task force to reduce or eliminate capitalism. I think it's a real pragmatic thing. You can slip it in page 8 of the Joe Biden manifesto. You know?
Can I ask what are your guys' like practical solutions? Like what do you personally see as like, are you both anarchists? I guess I mean I don't believe in labels, so you know, but I don't know what your goals are. Like I just know you're lefties, so
yeah, kind of anarchist-ish, I guess. I don't know, Sean's better talking about ourselves than I am.
Yeah, I guess if we were to put it down to something, if both of us were to speak together in one booming voice, we're like strongly influenced by Murray Bookchin and social ecology. And Bookchin, over his life, he was a communist at one point, an anarchist, later sort of settled on what he called communalism, which is like a synthesis. Very, very sympathetic to this. I think broadly identify as a social ecologist, but I'm not anti-electoralist in the sense that I think no one should participate in elections. I'm against electoralism as a strategy in itself to say this is the totality of politics. But I think it could be one piece of sort of like a collective, an ecology of tactics, if you will. So I guess we do want to see the dissolution of the state in its current form, definitely. One of the things we talk about on the show, I guess.
And then how do you guys hope to achieve that?
Well, with what we're doing, and with stuff like this, I think the narrative piece is sort of like one of three. We've talked a little bit about, so this is my sort of like eccentric theory on politics. You have narrative work is one trifecta, one part of the trifecta. You have prefigurative work, which also overlaps with the use of existing power. Those are two different things. So it's prefigurative work where you come together to do things that you see need to be done. And then there's also the use of existing power. So that could be entryism, elections, etc. Or like you might say, so I'll use the example of the Democratic Party. Using existing power is having Bernie Sanders win. But an even higher level of that same sort of tactic would be taking over the Democratic Party to to tilt the race for Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. So like it's sort of like an analysis of power to say like one piece of it is using power where it exists, one piece is creating power where it doesn't exist, and one piece is talking about the narrative landscape and changing common sense by creating a counter hegemony based on directly democratic ecological society. What we do on our show is entirely the narrative piece, but I think it has to be part of like a gestalt.
Mm-hmm. We like to I don't know. One way we talk about it is like creating a new common sense. Like we like to talk about these ideas as if everybody already agreed with them and they make sense, and they do make sense. But it's just this attempting to find ways that are like really easily digestible for talking about these kinds of ideas. And like one thing we latched onto in that area is talking about library socialism is a term we kind of threw together that had a surprising amount of depth to it, just like when we started thinking about what that would actually mean, and like kind of how libraries already exist in the society that we have now as this like little glimmer of a good thing in our society. They like operate on this different version of property rights where things are shared and you can take what you need and return it so other people can use it, and it reduces production because they don't have to produce a book for every person. Like multiple people can use the same book, and that helps with ecological aspects. And we kind of like fell down this library rabbit hole and like imagining a society where most things are based on a sort of library-like system in a lot of ways. And also just like the values behind librarianship are like really interesting and really aligned with leftist ideas and social ecological ideas specifically. So that's like one area we like to get into, because I think like the library system and like it's a good intuition pump for getting people to think about socialist ideas in a way that isn't scary for them and is something they're already familiar with and already understand and already like in most cases. Like people love the library because it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And they have video games now, by the way.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Like I remember the first time someone told me about that, I was like, what? And I ran there, and then of course like everything's already rented out except for like the Lego games, but like all the good games are all gone.
Well, imagine this. Hey, it is a mind-blowing idea. We got internet in our houses, plug the internet into the console, and with a true library socialist society, with any console, you should be able to play any game from history as long as it can run on it. Like, why should that be behind a paywall? Why should we
sign me up?
You're blowing my mind right now. You're radicalizing me in real time through the art of video game.
And from the financial side, and so I was in the pirate party, so I'm all about this piracy shit, and I know it in very good detail, which is the majority of profits on this stuff come in the first 3 months. Mm-hmm. So if you say, when you release a video game, you get an exclusive right on it for 6 months, and then after 6 months and 1 day, well, sorry, all 7 billion of us get a go at this game if it's any good. You actually haven't affected the business model of the company that much. And
as long as you pirate it after the first 3 months.
Yeah, so if the first 3 months are where the bulk of the profit comes in. So if it's something like I could pull up the stats. I just have to figure out where to look for this again. But it's like 75 to 80% of all the profit that something makes over the life cycle comes at the time of release and immediately afterwards. So if you wanted to preserve that like profit motive within our system and switch to a library a better library sort of society. After that, there's an option to sort of like square the circle there and still have access to all that information.
But doesn't like Nintendo still keep re-releasing every single game they've ever had to the tune of some kind of profit? I imagine that's why they keep doing it, right? Like every console, it seems like now you have to rebuy your library.
Yes, yeah, they do that. It's the bulk of so for example, Super Mario 1, the bulk of the money that it ever made was 40 years ago. But they can still make money off it now, so they do.
This is a serious political podcast, by the way, everybody. If you're no, that's fascinating though. I had no idea. I guess I should steer it back to Bernie for just 2 more seconds though before we move on to the other topic we talked about. What is everyone's advice going forward? Because I know a lot of people are kind of wandering aimlessly now. In terms of like, well, what do we do? I mean, I can't possibly support Joe Biden, even if I'm intending to vote for him to prevent a Trump presidency. I still don't want to canvass for him. Like, where do we move from here?
I mean, like I've maintained that even like the goal should have, even had Bernie won, the goal should still be to organize locally and make a push to keep pushing Bernie himself to the left, right? Because Bernie was a good mechanism and a good driver for the Democratic Party of the country as a whole to move leftward, which is obviously needed there, but it wasn't enough. Like certainly not in the facet that most people who are watching this or, you know, followers of this kind of dialogue believe. So like, I don't think the fight's done. If anything, the door is open now. And, you know, there's more people willing to engage. So all I can say is just keep up the fight. Just don't become complacent and give up.
Yeah, in terms of Joe Biden, I'd say you probably don't want to give him any money or volunteer for him, even if you're going to support, like going to throw the ballot his way. Probably want to do stuff more related to, well, because we're in I think that the COVID crisis we're in gives some interesting opportunities. It's a crisis. It's also an opportunity. It's something that the right is going to be really, really happy to make hay out of and make work for them. So we need to figure out ways of like, where are the leverage points in society right now? Can we organize pandemic doctors to call for a transition to eco-socialism? I don't know. But we need to analyze along those lines, I think, right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for this question. I'm bad at telling people what to do.
You're a podcaster. you're a public advocate by trade.
I talk about other things.
One thing I've been telling people for a while, because like, you know, I'm personally like a socialist, right? I've wanted to get rid of the employer-employee dynamic. So I'm really big on worker cooperatives, for example, because I'm like, this is a tangible way I can see to push this forward. And right now I've been really advocating for, there's probably a lot of people who are unemployed and they're sitting at home. And if you're unemployed and you're sitting at home, it would be an amazing time for you to band together with other people who are interested in doing the same things as you, especially if you already have a network from, say, your existing work. Like I was talking to someone today who's like, like me and the rest of my workers, we all worked at Applebee's. That's closed. We have no jobs. We don't know what to do. But we've always wanted to run our own restaurant. So I was like, why not start this as a worker cooperative? Obviously right now you can't don't go into the streets, don't endanger yourselves or endanger others, but you could start for example making food at home and delivering it to people who need it, like old people kind of business that you all ran together or something to that effect. But if you started these worker co-ops today, when everything is back, you would already have a leg up, I'd say, on a lot of other people who would just by default go right back to working at Applebee's for minimum wage, like they already were, right?
This discussion reminds me of, so we on our podcast Discord, we're doing a reading group right now for Post-Scarcity Anarchism by Bookchin, and one of the interesting, so like his original break from Marxism, I'd be interested to hear how you all feel about this. This idea is, he was working as an industrial union organizer, and he was a lifelong Marxist. He's a red diaper baby, raised by the Communist Party of New York.
I was going to say, wasn't he raised by the Communist Party?
Basically, yeah. And so he was a union organizer, and he came to this horrible conclusion that his whole map for reality was wrong, because workers wouldn't organize themselves. Workers wouldn't step up to the plate to demand a better society. They might demand better wages, but they wouldn't demand a better society. And he became convinced, and this is what switched him to anarchism. And then he later abandoned anarchism. It's a fascinating story. I could tell you the books to read about his whole trajectory. But his switch to anarchism was based on the premise that the workplace puts the idea of hierarchy into our heads. The idea of workplace hierarchy basically infects our psychology, where we're not able to challenge it. And the workplace itself wouldn't be revolutionary as a result of that. And he sort of like reneged on this decades later, or said, it's more complicated or whatever. But it's just an interesting idea, because when I think about worker co-ops and stuff like that, is there a possibility that, although workers obviously have strategic advantages, especially in certain sectors across society, that there could be something, say, like tenants unions? Could there be other means of people coming together that would have a more revolutionary character than a workplace, given that workplaces are ultimately controlled by bosses and so on? And I'm not advocating for that. I just have idea. I don't know.
You're throwing out there. I totally get it. Like I've usually gone back and forth with people on that very subject, and one of the things I say is that it depends. Like, not all worker cooperatives are the same. For example, right? There's a huge varying degree, and within our current capitalist system, they have been proven to be very productive, effective. The biggest difference between the ones that are in operation now, like the biggest one obviously is the umbrella corporation of Mondragon in Spain, which I think has like $20 billion of annual sales, and it's actually a one worker cooperative giant union that oversees a whole bunch of smaller worker cooperatives. They do have, like, I think within any kind of organization, there's going to be people who want to assume more responsibility or do more things. So they do have, for example, structures. And what they do is they limit the pay of a CEO. Instead of like the American corporation, which is about, sometimes the big ones get about 321 times the pay of the worker to the employee, they cap it at about 5 to 8 times the worker to the employee. But to your other question, are jobs or work inherently going to be structural? That could be true, but like I don't think either of us would be advocating for a society in which no one worked, right? Or there wasn't any form of that, because I think that's usually a straw man that's thrown at libertarian socialists or ANCOMs or something, that you don't want to work, you all just want free handouts from the government. Isn't that what you communists are always talking about, right? And to me, I usually respond with, no, we absolutely want to work. I just want to work in a world that's more equitable and that has less unjust hierarchies as a result of it.
And the classic ability need thing, I think, is a good answer to that sort of question too, of like, to each according to their ability, from each from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, isn't about abolishing work necessarily. But I think also maybe you could abolish work.
But then where exactly, like, are you talking about far in the future when you have luxury queer space communism and the robots do all the work or something? Like there's a lot of things that still need to be done in society, right?
Yeah, a lot of the time you can think of it like I've been more on the anti-work side of political stuff sometimes, and like it's partially like not a jokey position, but like a position taken to like get people thinking about this kind of stuff, because like obviously there are things that need to happen, but like the way that we structure work in society right now, where you like have a specific job and then like you are that job and you do that thing, like you're the accountant, you're an accountant, so then you do accountant stuff like every day, 5 days a week or more, and like the I don't know, I guess social construct of work, the way that we think about work and do work right now, I think does need like a massive overhaul. And like obviously we need to not have bosses extracting like money from people's labor while they don't have to do very much work, because they can just own a business, own people's labor, like worker co-ops and like just people actually owning the profits of their own work is like super important. But also like I think we should be directed in the direction of like trying to reduce as much labor as possible, or as much stuff that like people don't want to do as much as possible. And like a lot of that's going to be automating it, and some of that is going to be spreading it out in such a way so that it's more even. Like maybe you take a 2-week stint every year where you have to do some kind of unfortunate job or something like that. But I think like yeah, I guess I was just trying to like talk around the like anti-work or abolishing work side of things, because that's an area of politics that I've been interested in and taken that position before, but it doesn't mean like kind of what the conservatives straw man version of it.
Like you're podcasters, right? Is this your full-time job?
Yes.
Just about. Yeah, actually, funny story. I just quit my day job right before COVID-19. And I literally said to Aaron in private, we're going to have enough money to live on as long as there isn't an economic crisis.
That was a week before like the NBA shut down?
That was in like February, I think you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But on the anti-work stuff, now that I've got the gears turning, I really want to stand up for it. So anti-work politics, there's an anti-work sort of anarchist trend, which is best embodied by, say, like Bob Black.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an anti-work communist trend, which is best embodied by like Inventing the Future, Cernicek and Williams. I'm not a huge fan of Bob Black, but some of his points about work themselves are good. He defines work, I think, as labor that needs to be compelled by financial necessity in order to have your needs met. And so I think a way that you can sort of square the circle on that is like, yes, I'm not saying that doctors shouldn't exist and the next time there's a pandemic, they should all go home and just chill. Like what anti-work politics is saying is that no one should be forced to work to have their basic needs met.
I completely agree with that. Like, of course, I think we have the means right now as a society to provide housing, food, and I know food's the new controversial one. People are like, wait, do you think we should provide food? I was like, yeah, I think you should just have your basic necessities met so that no one has to suffer, right? So that's healthcare, food, housing, that kind of stuff. That is achievable. We have the resources to do that today. But at the same time, I think, like, for example, you, like everyone here, I guess, in one way or another, if you're working in podcasting or broadcasting or YouTubing, right, you probably love your jobs, like even though like I don't consider a lot of this work. Like sometimes I'll do this for like 18 hours a day, not just streaming but editing and doing sound and stuff, because I actually adore it, and that's why I feel it's a huge privilege to be in where other people don't have that opportunity, because like I'm a welder, I have to weld, kind of thing, right, or whatever your job would be. So I think I agree with you. I'm for everything that should be automated. I think, well, I mean, under the system we have now, everything that can be automated will be automated eventually, right? But I mean, if you're talking about theorists, didn't even like Luxemburg, like Rosa Luxemburg, didn't she even say that like there's a certain degree to which society, to which individuals are going to labor within society? It's whether or not you're exploiting that labor is where the problem comes from.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that quote, but it sounds.
Oh, no, that's not a verbatim quote. I'm just I'm really roughly throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think don't exploit the labor, but also like reduce it as much as possible. Like unless people really want to do it, then absolutely go for it. But yeah.
Aaron's talked about before something interesting, which he might remember more details than me, which is when the weekend first started, and how it was sort of like managed by.
It was Ford, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. It was like, but this is like before Ford, like when the expectation was just kind of to work 7 days a week. Like the kind of idea of taking one day off a week came from there's this book, a Renegade History of the USA, that has some of this stuff in it. It also has some other stuff that's a bit iffy in it, but I really liked this history. And there's like the idea is that like a lot of these foreign workers in the USA, like Irish people who are drunks and like people from other countries and stuff, would just kind of fuck off on the weekend anyway. Like they would start drinking on Saturday night and then like kind of go to church on Sunday and then come to work, but they would leave early and start drinking even more. And then Monday would also be kind of a write-off. And it was just this like unspoken tradition of like, we can't work every single day. Like one of these nights we're going to get drunk and then fuck off the next day. And that was like prefigurative weekends, like taking weekends before anyone offered it to them, just like, we need this.
Yeah.
I think of that as like a really quintessential awesome anti-work politic thing. And a really pragmatic version would be like reducing work days, reducing work weeks. There was this great Jacobin article about having a year off every 5 years or something like that. Like just setting it up in society that every 5 years.
That's wild. I would prefer like if we had the 4-day work week or something. I've also read studies that show that like working 8 hours a day is woefully inefficient, because after 6 hours, like human beings just stop being productive at whatever tasks they're trying to endure if they've been doing the same monotonous thing for a while. So we could reduce that as well. I think isn't Sweden doing some pilot program where government workers work like 4 days a week or something?
I think it was Norway. It was one of the Scandinavian.
Okay.
I believe it was Norway though.
Mm-hmm. And is it working out? Well, I'm sure they'll say yes.
Yeah, early returns that productivity hadn't seen a decline. So by all metrics, it seemed like it was a rousing success. But I don't know in what capacity that had been implemented. If it was all throughout or like a trial phase.
If you Google, there's various articles about different countries who've tried things, but also companies who've just instituted this as a policy, like mostly for their white collar workers, obviously, but like that they also just find that it tends to work better. I think a 4-day work week of 6 hours each day at the same pay as the current work week would be a good
baby step.
Yeah, a first step.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for that. I think everyone would enjoy that. I was the reason I was talking about Ford is I think he was one of the first people in the U.S. to want to give weekends to his employees, but it wasn't out of any kind of goodness of his heart. He was like a raging anti-Semite. It was because he wanted to give them the ability to purchase goods, including his cars. So by doing so, by giving them an extra day of the week, he would give them the opportunity to put the money that they had been earning back into the market, and specifically back into his motor vehicles.
Oh yeah, we had read about this we did an episode on billionaires broadly, and this had come up. And yeah, he reduced the hours and boost the wages. Mm-hmm. And then the thing I would add to that is he published an anti-Semitic newspaper he distributed in all the cars.
It just, why? You can't. He's like, I'm gonna do something decently decent, but not out of the goodness of my heart, but because I want to like earn more money and make more like profit, and at the same time, I gotta throw in the anti-Semitism in there, just like a little sprinkle of it as a treat.
You gotta stay true to yourself, right?
Yeah, that's true. Follow your heart.
And he was used by Hitler, actually, and this is the really creepy and freaky thing about billionaires, is how they have all this power. So like I have met guys that I would like worked on a construction site with or went to high school with who had an anti-Semitic phase. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's permissible, but within people's lives, they can go through weird conspiracy things, and ultimately there's no harm. But when Ford did it, because he was a billionaire, he's like the first billionaire, he influenced Hitler.
Wow.
The Nazis used him as an example of
oh wow. The Nazis got him.
I think he was going to say that billionaires shouldn't exist, and that
yeah, I got it. Maybe it was the billionaires that got him. Oh, he's back. Did you know that you just left?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My Discord thing just suddenly shut down right when I was talking shit about the Billies.
Yeah. What a coincidence.
Well, I think what I was saying is that they were like, oh, look, this smart, great businessman. He's so smart. He figured out that the Jews are behind everything bad. And then they use that as justification for all the other, like it was one of the front. And it's just wild because
there's so much crossover like that, eh? Because like didn't the entire eugenics program that the Nazis ended up enacting, it was modeled after the US one? They're like, oh yeah, this works. Let's try one of these out and let's do a eugenics over here.
I think I do remember something like that. Yeah, and the and also the use of like what is it? like Calvinism tied to communism. So they started taking this like hyper Puritan work ethic stuff from American corporations and then applied it to like Soviet structure. It's another fascinating cross-pollination that you wouldn't expect.
Wow. One of our mods is saying Finland tried a 6-hour workday in the 90s and Sweden more recently did it, but they're not sticking to it. The Finnish PM talked recently of a 4-day work week, but it didn't lead to anything. It's too bad.
Yeah.
I guess yeah. What's the bow on the package? We've been so over the place, but we totally forgot about the elections. I never even got a chance to ask all of you. Do you think that there's even going to be a normal election in November after seeing like 3% reported or voted in Wisconsin, and then Trump is refusing to do mail-in ballots for November? The numbers being so bad in the United States, I don't see anything really changing there in terms of their ability to safely get out of their homes and not risk, I
mean, I'm somewhat optimistic that in some terms or some capacity, this virus abates in a way that society can sort of open up, in that by November, an election would be like feasible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope that's the case. It's a long ways away, right? If we're still hunkered down, I don't know. Like,
it could also be like we're just getting started on like the second hunkering down after like the summer let off, and then in October, November they got to shut things down again. I didn't know Trump had ruled out mail-in ballots, because that's seems like the obvious
as much as he can. But yeah, he in a statement yesterday, and I think it was Politico that picked this up. Yeah, it was just straight up like it doesn't bode well for conservatives. It was just a very mask off moment, because it was like we don't win elections when people have more ability to vote, basically, which is why the Republicans are so good at voter suppression.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense why they don't want to do it. But like, yeah.
I mean, not to get too conspiratorial about it too. I would just
please.
I don't know how much I would take solace or believe the results of an election that was looked over or presided over by the Trump administration, that was conducted by mail-in ballots only.
Absolutely. I don't think that's conspiratorial.
I mean, like,
have they given you any reason to doubt or like believe in their efficacy there?
Like, there's no like nonpartisan kind of Elections Canada organization that presides over elections over there. So I mean, I don't know. I really hope it wouldn't come down to that.
I had another interesting conspiracy idea about the primary, which is that in a lot of these races, especially when Bernie was still in the riding, or still in the running, the thing that pushed Biden over the edge was all the advanced mail-in ballots. Which just seemed weird to me. Like, it seems like advanced mail-in ballots should skew towards younger, like less committed voters. And then I remember that old conspiracy about like dead people voting. And then I was looking at the data of who voted for Biden, and it's all people who statistically should be dead.
It's that Simpsons episode. It's the Simpsons Halloween special. Wow.
It's like, oh yeah, he does really well with 105-year-olds. They all 100%.
Cornered that demographic. That was Bernie's mistake. He never reached out to the 100+
the Civil War veterans.
Yeah, the Civil War vet crowd.
The opposite version, if it's not a conspiracy, it means that all those old people who voted for Biden were voting because they're like, Medicare for some. Okay?
Miniature American flags for others.
Not going to let these kids in on the Medicare. It's good. We got.
Oh man, I genuinely feel really like sad for like leftists in America right now. Like it's rough enough sometimes in Canada, but at least then there's enough democratic socialist programs here, healthcare and I don't know, video games and libraries.
Yeah, like we have a pretty decent EI expansion benefit, like has some real problems and stuff, but then Americans they get like a $1,200 check. I
Oh
think they did
yeah,
have some UI expansions too, but like that's about it. That's like I've seen people
we
being
kind of
like,
got
"Oh, how do
a
I
quasi
exist on this?"
faux UBI just randomly because of the pandemic, right? Like I don't know if you've logged into the CRA, but the application process for whether or not you can apply for the COVID $2,000 a month program is just selecting yes and then hitting submit, and then it goes right into your bank account. Like you have to agree to the terms, and then it's just like bloop. I was like, wow. So that just happened.
Beautiful.
If any Americans are feeling jealous, don't worry. At the end of the tax year, the Canadian government is going to find all sorts of ways to punish the poor.
Oh,
This
yes.
is just a temporary measure to make sure the landlords get their rent.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, they're going to fuck us all.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's in the terms of service. It's like, by the way, if you do not meet these conditions, be prepared to have to repay this money in full or something.
Well, it's that you definitely have to pay taxes on it. I don't know why they're not like taking taxes off of it or making it tax
That
free.
is
Like
weird.
it's like you get $2,000 a month for a bunch of months, and then they like want a big payment at the end of the year back. Like from
I think they're hoping that everything will be back to normal by then, right? Like, not that there's
sure,
any going to
but,
be
like,
ever any kind of serious ramifications from this whole ordeal. Like I keep trying to explain to some people, like it's never going to go completely back to normal. You know, like the things you need in place, right? Like first off, you're going to need a universal vaccine, one that's like impervious to mutations within the COVID virus, and then on top of that, how exactly do a lot of industries, specific ones that have been completely bankrupt through this process, how do they suddenly recover? Like it's not everyone is the oil and gas sector, right? Not everyone is getting these billion and trillion dollar bailouts. There's actual industries that will just fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
How long do y'all think this is going to last? Like if you were to put money on it right now.
Oh, I don't know.
Dave's a futurist, so he's the one to ask.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It depends on what day I wake up and how I feel in the morning. Sometimes I'm like, maybe by like June or July things will be better and we'll be able to open up. And then other times I'm like, well, it was a good society we had.
It's just full black pill.
I mean, like I guess all four of us are in BC, right, or Vancouver. It's heartening to see that like things aren't terrible here. Our numbers aren't bad. Like I was just outside walking the dog before this, and there's still people milling about. Obviously in this weird kind of like isolated pods that we now live in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like we're all shuttered inside our accommodations, and it's not like people are dying in atrocious amounts every day. So that's something. It's heartening to see that.
We're so much better off here than other parts, even other parts of the country, like Quebec, and we're right beside Washington. Like every time I look at the numbers out of Washington, I'm like, oh my god, you poor people.
So, like, I don't know. It's hard for me to see like how would society get back to normal? Like, maybe things getting back to normal here in BC in some capacity, but like across the country, I can't see that happening. So I don't know. It's so specific to regional areas that I don't know.
My most optimistic view on like how it can get better is that it kind of like abates a bit for summer and people can start going out again, and then like by fall we kind of know how to take care of this better. Like kind of mandatory masks in public I think might be a good thing, and then like if they really get on the tracking people in case, like they might be able to do like more
like they did in Vietnam
opening up. I'm actually unfamiliar exactly with what they did in Vietnam, but I know that they had good numbers. But I know that countries that had mandatory masks in public right away had like way better numbers.
Do you guys watch Non-Compete at all? American Johnson, the YouTuber or breadtuber?
I've seen a little bit of him. I've seen him debate Destiny, and then I watched some videos.
He's a really prominent ANCOM. And he was telling me, because they're really he lives in Vietnam, right? His partner's there. He was telling me that what they pulled off was nothing short of incredible, in that every single person who caught COVID, they would do this kind of 5 degrees of separation where they track down the people that they had contact with in the past 14 days, then track down those people, then track down those people, and they actually charted a list of every single case and every single cross infection within the country, and absolutely plummeted the numbers because of that. And now the only new infections they get are from outside people coming in.
Yeah, I think like that's how you have to do it. Like really tracking, testing everyone. You have to have enough tests to do that, and then just like making sure people are still pretty careful in public, not to be like stupid about it. I think then like you might get some, but like we're not prepared for that at all right now. So like maybe in the fall.
Like when what Dave was saying, where he was like, I think we might be able to get, well, sorry, on the better days when you're not drunk on black pills, but like that we might be able to get outside a little bit more in like June. Like I can see us loosening the requirements as long as everything kind of stays okay. But if you get like there's flare ups that are possible all the time. Like Singapore is in the middle of a really bad one right now, right? And if things go bad, then they're gonna have to, it's kind of like you reset and start to zero. Ideally your entire infrastructure hasn't taken a hit. Like, you know, if New York, for example, bottoms out like they're supposed to tomorrow, because it's by tomorrow when they run out of respirators and there's not new ones coming, and their entire medical system collapses, and then they will eventually get over this, because everyone does, because just human beings on average are healing from this, right? I think, you know, at the worst you'll get the fatality rates of Italy like 12%, but if you get over that hump and they get back down to it, but the medical system is so devastated from this, doctors got sick, nurses got sick, everything, then the risk of this flaring up again becomes exponentially more dangerous. So everyone has to be even more careful at that point.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on stuff that like we don't know yet, like how long or whether there's immunity for people who were already infected, and just like more numbers being clearer, and think, because everything's really confusing right now, and like I think we just don't actually know how it's gonna shake out in terms of like how this affects us long term. I guess that's obvious, but yeah.
For Price is Right rules, closest without going over, I guess 20 months.
Ooh. Oh, it's a long time.
That's a very long time. And sorry, is that for it being totally done? Like everything's key. Like we're just back to normal. Like,
I think there could be some on and off during that period. And yeah, I'd say 20 months is the earliest that I would guess. And this is totally just bullshit guess. But I would guess 20 months from the start of like the lockdown sort of stuff happening in BC would be when we could expect things to return to something approaching normal. Just a guess. But based on some observations about what there's like this article, things aren't going to return to normal, from the Harvard Review or something like that, which says 18 months and predicts a cycle of like isolation and non-isolation going back and forth with some like little 1 week or 2 week gaps where people are allowed to do shit again, but then it flares up, so everyone has to stop. Yeah, I think this is going to be a long-term thing. And the other thing that I observed is when Trump said that you're going to open stuff up again in 3 weeks, even though it was obviously bullshit. Yeah. The stock market rallied. And I was like, oh yeah, politicians have to say everything's about to open forever, no matter what. Otherwise the system collapses. So they're always going to be like, yeah, 3-4 weeks from now. And like, oh, got a new guest 3-4 weeks from now. New guest. It's 2 months this time. Yeah, 2 months is coming up, guys. It's going to be another month after that. So like I think that we're going to have that for like 2 years.
I do love how he made Easter like just like this holy day, like it's gonna be a great day, a blessed day, what a wonderful day, you know, like we're just gonna all come back to normal at that. So you know, no. I mean, the best part about
very symbolic that society rising from the dead again.
On top of everything else, faces again by April.
Yeah. And like that date specifically is probably when things are going to be at their worst in the US. Like it's when the bodies will be in their highest piles, unfortunately. So like it's so bizarre. Like I always think he's got to have someone. There's got to be at least one person who sits him down and pulls out the most colorful graphs and charts with very little information, very easy, and just like, Mr. President, this is what is happening, and then that's just how they shake him until he's like, okay, and like there has to be someone, right? Like, how can he be so off base? He's got what, like the greatest, what is it, security and information team in the world, like OPSEC teams, like the FBI, the CIA, like massive you know.
I think there's multiple people spending like full-time job hours amount of time and like trying to figure out how to get simple truths into his head and like get him to agree with that. Like, there's got to be so many people in that building like trying to figure out how to do that.
I'm sure a lot of it too goes to like his trusted people. Like, instead of even trying to talk to Trump directly, it's just like, oh yeah, if you want Trump to understand something, convince Stephen Miller of it and get Stephen Miller to tell him it in a racist way, and then we're all good.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. So if we do this, we will save white lives. Okay.
Coronavirus can affect white people.
Yeah. Well, you have my attention now. Wow, that flew by. We just passed the hour mark. I am to understand that you would like to do some comedy sketches as well, or something of that nature.
Yeah, if you're down for it, we haven't done it before, like the whole sausage being made on a stream before. But on our show, typically what we'll do is we'll have a discussion like this, and then afterwards we'll do some sort of like improvised comedy bits, playing characters. Usually we'll sort of like crack the what's funny about it ahead of time, like what's the punchline, and then sort of play it out for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then in the edit we add all the sound effects and stuff, and then we sprinkle it along throughout the episode, so it makes the experience more fun and better. So if you're willing to do that, I'd love to.
No, I totally am. Can I quickly grab another glass of water?
Yep.
I'll just leave you to entertain each other now.
I just refreshed the ncov2019.live website, where you can see like the detailed COVID cases around the world. It was made by that like 17-year-old. And we are going to break 100,000 dead from COVID in the next 24 hours.
God damn. And I'm guessing the majority of that recent spike is from the United States.
Probably, yeah. They're the fastest growing right now, from what I remember.
Yeah, they've got about just shy of 3 times as much as Spain and Italy, who are like roughly tied for second in terms of how fast people are dying. Yeah. And over 10% of the deaths that happened in the US total happened in the last 24 hours. And I think that's when I look on this page, that's where I really pay attention to, is like, what's the rate like?
Yeah.
And so like in the last 24 hours, out of the 95,000 that we know are dead, about 8% of them happened in the last 24 hours, which means that we're on a pretty macabre trajectory here. And we are in between the first and second plane, hitting the towers, metaphorically speaking, except with a much more significant death toll, which is pretty fucked up and hard to deal with emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, I've already seen a bunch of people like on the right-wing side of, I guess, media in the United States already sort of gloating or taking shots at the experts for their initial projections to be so low compared to what they had before. They're like, look at these so-called experts now saying that, let's say 80,000 people are going to die, as opposed to the earlier estimates of 200,000 all the way up to like 1 million people, and saying, look, we need to start the economy up. It's only going to be like 80,000 people or whatever. And I'm like just so shattered, thinking how quickly they're able to just push aside 80,000 lives as if it's nothing, right? Like,
well, yeah, and also like the death rate is only as low as it is now because we're already doing all this stuff.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
If we stop doing it, then the death rate it goes up again to those earlier higher estimates. Like the estimates are going down because we're
social distancing, staying at home. Yeah. But just this callous loss of life.
Yeah, it reminds me of something Sean mentioned too earlier on when people were just being, oh, well, the only people who die are like really old people or really sick people. Like it's just the vulnerable, whatever.
Wasn't that Sean Hannity?
That was basically
It was lots of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the other thing too of like look, the flu kills this many people per year. Like this is gonna kill people at the same rate as the flu. And it's like this is, if I killed as many people as the flu does, I would be a mass murderer. And this is new deaths. This is new deaths.
Yeah,
this isn't just like the flu people.
Yeah, you get both now. You get the flu and you get COVID.
Yeah, it's not like the flu just suddenly disappeared either.
You know, a lot of people shit talk Hitler, but you know, over 6 million people die of heart disease over decades. So it's wrong. It's wrong to murder. It's wrong to allow people to die too.
Yes. I don't think those are spicy takes. So how are we doing this so-called sausage factory?
One of the things that we talked about in the private message was the possibility of a sketch around. Oh, we were just talking about the real death toll, so it sounds so fucked up. But doing a comedy sketch about sacrificing people to the economy, like you know, pushing the vulnerable into the volcano to make the economy gods happy or something.
Chat was requesting I put puppies on the screen, so I just got the puppies on there. So that'll make this even stranger. This is going to be a really weird stream to walk in on. The stream is a sausage fest. It's true.
Absolutely.
Okay, so do we pick characters? Like, how do you often do this? Are we LARPing? Is this like D&D?
It's weird because we don't usually do it on video, but I'm just looking at the puppies in the stream and I'm very amused.
That's actually a live puppy cam, so those are live dogs as well.
Oh, they're real. They're happening right now.
They're very real. Yes. Oh, I hope now I'm gonna get a copyright strike from the cam dogs.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually we're just like, okay, I'll be the papa, you be the son, and we'll do this. So I don't know if it's also more difficult with 4 people, but if we're sacrificing, we could all be in like a board meeting talking about sacrificing people. Or one of us could be against it, trying to convince the other ones.
Oh, can we all be real people? Can I be like Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey?
Sure.
Nice.
It's like the head council of America deciding how many.
Yes. Well,
how many people?
Well, I was gonna say, didn't Jack Dorsey just pledge like $1 billion to fight COVID, and then everyone's like, that's not a pledge. You're using it to form an LLC of which you're going to own the copyright of everything you develop in this new like medical factory. Like it's not giving. You just started a new company. It's probably going to be very profitable. Like.
Well, that's the whole billionaire racket, right? It's like, oh, I'm committing $10 billion to solve heart disease by putting $10 billion into the Sean Villiers Foundation, which is going to pay my children a wage. And like, it's not really giving $10 billion to anything. It's taking your money to form an organization to like look good and hopefully actually do things also. But it's not really a charity in the same way to be a billionaire and then form your own company to advocate for something. It's not charity, it's advocacy. It's different. It's
true. Someone just asked, is this the fetish channel? And I was like, I guess if you just tuned in, it would appear that something strange is going on. It's an odd combination of things right now. An odd combination of stimulus.
It's the billionaires fetish.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We don't want to kink
murdering people for profit.
Ooh. All right. Well, why don't you guys take charge, and then we'll pop in because we're new to this.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Aaron and I will start by being some sociopathic executives, making the case to you as politicians that people must die for the economy, and you two can be maybe a bit resistant, but buy into it whole hog. I think that would be funny.
Okay.
Okay. End scene. Prepare.
Well, I am really happy to have you guys in here today. We are a data analytics firm working for the government, and we're hoping to get a solution to this COVID mess. We know there's a big impact on the economy, and we know you're very concerned.
Well, absolutely. My re-election campaign totally hinges on the economy bouncing back and getting people back to work.
It's the only thing that matters. The only thing that has ever mattered, and the only thing that will ever matter.
The economy doesn't get back to work. If we don't all get back to work, then nobody makes any money, and we all starve and die, right? So nobody wants everyone to starve and die. So we crunch the numbers, and I think we have a solution.
So this first slide I'm going to be showing you here is called the everyone stays home, doesn't work, and therefore dies scenario. This is with social distancing and other measures. You can see here we've kept the death toll at a respectable but perhaps a bit too low 150,000 innocent human beings.
Now, I'm just going to interject here and say that President Dave will not understand the graphs unless you use a very bright neon yellow marker. So I'd like you to now trace the graphs that you have there with a neon yellow marker for the president.
Oh, absolutely. We're used to that with politicians.
And now here is the second slide. Now this is called the booming, roaring economy. Everyone returns to work and everyone survives model. 3 million dead.
But what is the Dow in the second patch?
That's the most important thing, sir. The only thing that we should be interested in.
Yeah, so we'll just put an overlay over both of those graphs with the monetary graphs, and you'll see here that in the first scenario, economy bad. Second scenario, exactly green, beautiful economy, flower, like a plant, like a tree growing into the sun.
Well, see, now I don't like trees, but I do like money, and trees remind me of money because that's what we used to make the money out of. So I don't know, sir. What are your thoughts?
Well, will we have enough people left to vote for me to retain my power?
Absolutely. And some of these people might even have babies, and they'll teach their babies to vote for you if you're the one who saved their economy for them.
And then once we have the babies, can we push more of their parents away and create another stimulus boost?
If we need a second boom for the economy, we are leaving the option open to sacrifice another few million.
Look, it's mostly old people that die. So if we just encourage people to keep having babies, we can have maybe a faster turnover in the worker employment realm of, people live shorter lives, but they have more babies. It'll be fine from a business perspective.
But sir, you should keep in mind, Mr. President, that these babies won't be able to vote. And old people do vote en masse, right? Unless we can change the voting age for newly born fetuses, for example.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm loving this. Absolutely.
You should also ask, Mr. President, how many people do we need to sacrifice in order to make this the most profitable? And basically, it's the stonks. It's the stonk market, and we need it to keep going on the up direction.
So look, we've made a bunch of scenarios here, but basically, if you want a really simple answer, the more people we sacrifice, the better the economy. So you can do a whole range within that. People are going to get mad that you're killing their grandparents, obviously. But, if we target which grandparents we're killing to the people who don't matter so much, because you don't want to kill all the grandparents, but there's models. There's
some very rich grandparents, and we hope to keep them alive.
Absolutely. We keep the rich ones alive. I need them. I need that support.
It's something easy that you can bring to the shareholders if you want to talk about this plan is we crunch the numbers. And so if you're an average shareholder, you look at your holdings. Say you've got $100,000 in stock. Who knows? For every person that we sacrifice to the economic reality, let's say, the gods, the line, you can count on a return on your investment per person of 1/10 of 1% for every dollar you have invested. So if for every individual person, 1/100th of 1%. I misread that. 1/100th of 1% per human life is a return on investment for you, the shareholders. You can bring that to all your donors. Anything if they're like, hey, my mailman died, my gardener died, my servant died. You could say, look, do you want a return on investment or not? Because I thought we were living in an economy, not a living servant world. Just kidding.
Well, I'm just sold. You guys have done some tremendous work.
You did coin the term the god of we call him Capitalor, and he's quite a forgiving god, but he's a hungry god. So we will need to feed quite a few human meat sacks to him. Do we have a number on the meat sacks, by the way? I haven't heard a hard number on meat sacks.
Oh, it's low millions to mid millions, depending on how much you want to cash.
How much do you want to cash in, sir?
As much as possible.
Yes, it is the American way, after all.
So mid-millions it is, so be it.
And let's leave the door open for a possible high millions.
Mm-hmm. I think that's totally acceptable. And then
After the election.
And then,
as much as I would like to see high millions, I do just want to warn you that, again, like, we don't want to anger people too much. So there might be a dampening effect, even though, if people were more rational, the more millions dead, the more economy, obviously. But, sometimes
you leave that to me.
I'll
blame
in the way of the logic.
Have you seen Idiocracy? That's what we're living under. People don't want to sacrifice human for the economy. It's bizarre. It's frankly stupid, and we look down on them. And that's why you're there, and we're here, and they're outside in the streets fighting for masks.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're garbage people. Could we also ask about? Is there potentially some kind of unproven drug, maybe one that's used for something completely unrelated, that we could then buy a whole bunch of, and maybe if we had shares in the companies that produce the drug, make more money, because money's great. So could we get more money that way?
And side effects have no implication here. I don't care about this.
Even if it makes your heart explode, like literally.
Yeah, I think we know a guy who can do the trials or whatever, or at least pretend to do them. I'm not quite sure on how all that works, but I'm sure there's some chemical. Absolutely, why not?
And if we find that it doesn't work, we can always sell it to developing countries.
And force them to take it.
Yes. It's a real thing that the U.S. corporate industrial complex does, is that they find that something is, and actually it's something that Elizabeth Warren, as legal counsel for a company, fought for their right to do. I'm mixing some of the details here, but there was a type of someone in the chat probably knows. There was a type of IUD device that was causing infections that they shipped all around the world to people who then got very serious infections as a result of it. Because of money and
I was like, even if it makes your heart literally explode.
That's interesting. I never heard about that Elizabeth Warren incident.
Yeah, it's part of the Elizabeth Warren sucks sizzle reel. I'll try to get.
There's so many. Nathan J. Robinson put together an incredible article for Current Affairs on Elizabeth Warren, and it's just like it was back when she was like a political threat, but it was just an amazing highlight reel of like all the incredible things she's done. Accepting the title of and telling people that she was the first female person of color graduate from Harvard that they ever had in their history. So, or releasing the racist cookbook, Pow Wow Chow, with a combination of ethnic foods. Also strange. Oh, also lied about her father.
Pow Wow Chow being an actual name?
Pow Wow Chow is the name of the cookbook, and it has a whole bunch of racist recipes inside it.
With Pow Wow Chow.
Elizabeth Warren's recipe was stolen from the New York Times.
Yes, and it's disgusting.
It's clam soup.
Yeah, and it's got mayonnaise in it. It's so bizarre.
The Cherokee tradition of mayonnaise clam soup.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And actually, I think on the TrueAnon podcast, they traced back her lineage to the person that she claimed was that she thought was her indigenous relative, and they found newspaper clippings about him fighting a quote drunken Indian or something like that. If you look at the TrueAnon episodes about Elizabeth Warren, it's really fucking weird stuff.
Oh, she used to play into it. She lied about her father being a janitor. Not true. She also lied about her grandparents not being able to marry because of discrimination. Also not true. Just bizarre. Weird. A lot of weird things.
Yeah.
We live in the malarkey timeline now.
Yeah. Joe Biden failing again on that front for sure.
I don't know, how do you guys usually wrap up your podcast? What do you do? Is there a song? Is there a
Do we dance?
We usually just sort of improv a little song that we all sing together with our guests. I just threw in the chat an article about Elizabeth Warren's time defending corporations, and also a link to a Reddit thread about it. And it looked like some people were contesting the details of whether or not which side she was fighting on or whatever in it. So I'll leave that to people to look into. I'm just passing on slander without verifying it.
Awesome.
If it's not the case.
Nice.
But totally seems right.
That's awesome.
But yeah, in terms of wrapping up, we usually just thank people for watching and stuff, and we'll do some pickup recording after this too to like just smooth it all together, and we'll do a little intro and outro and give context and stuff. So however you want to wrap this up is cool. By
why don't you guys do all your shout outs, because that way when I put the VOD up on the other YouTube channel, people know how to find you and reach you and Patreon you.
Cool. Yeah. So our podcast is called Seriously Wrong. You can find us at SRSLY.WRONG.com. Seriously without vowels. And we're on all the major podcasting services, Patreon. And we get how we do this stuff. So we really appreciate the support and help. And if you want to listen to our show, I think there's some really great episodes, especially check out the prison abolition one first.
Yeah, do you guys have anything you want to say?
I'd just rather have awkward pauses and dead air. I think we did pretty good though, all things considered, for a 4-way podcast. In terms of spacing, timing. Very fun chemistry. It was a blast doing this with you guys. I like the sketch comedy thing is a good idea. We should do that more, Dave. We're always so serious. We're just like,
we're not serious. We're like as far from serious as possible. If anything, we should add to the rest of our.
Oh, good point. If you want to check out what we do political comedy stuff. YouTube.com/TheSerfsTV is our main hub, and then there's Twitch.tv/TheSerfsTV for live streams on a regular basis, and then everywhere else social media is sold. So Twitter is also TheSerfsTV. And for the Serfs, I'm Lance.
I'm Dave.
Hey, and for Seriously Wrong, I'm Sean.
I'm Aaron.
Thanks for having us on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a blast, guys. Bye, chat. We will see you tomorrow.